Last week, my sermon was very politically charged because I was upset with everything going on in the country. And I thought after the service, many of you came up to me and said, "Why didn't you say anything about your trip to Israel?" I forgot that I went to Israel last month. That's how time has been moving recently. So I would like to share with you today some insights and reflections from my recent trip to Israel. And it's appropriate perhaps as we read Parashat Shemot, which sets the stage for the most transformative journey in Jewish history, the Exodus from Egypt. This is a story this morning of transitions. Transitions as a family turns into a people. It begins with a list of names. Shemot means names, grounding the narrative in the shared identity of the children of Israel. From there, it moves to a story of suffering, resilience, and leadership, introducing Moses as a reluctant leader who ultimately rises to shepherd his people out of bondage. In many ways, my trip mirrored these themes of connection, responsibility, and transformation. I was there a month ago for the Rabbinical Assembly Convention, a gathering of conservative rabbis from around the world. But my time was much more than just a professional conference, spent in a professional conference. It was a journey of personal meaning and communal solidarity and a reflection on our collective roles as Jews. I want to share with you this morning 3 specific moments from the trip that left a profound impact on me, each of which echoes some themes that we learned in our reading this morning. The first moment, one that was very emotional for me, was having the privilege of representing Beth Tikvah at the groundbreaking ceremony for a new kindergarten facility that is going to be built at Kibbutz Kisufim. I was there with Howard Price, who was in Israel at the same time. Howard's here today. You know that over the past year, our synagogue has been raising funds to support the project, but I had never seen Kibbutz Kisufim before. I had only heard about it, so this was an opportunity to visit the kibbutz, and it was quite a humbling experience. I learned about Kibbutz Kisufim. Before October the 7th, 2023, it was a thriving, vibrant community. It's located just a few kilometers away from the Gaza border, known for agricultural innovation, a sense of a tight-knit community, and a deep commitment to the pioneering spirit of Israel. Life on the kibbutz was centered around farming. It has agricultural reserves, and residents working together to maintain the farms and the tracts of land and the orchards and all the communal projects. And children grow up in an ideal environment. It's really beautiful. We heard from people who had grown up on the kibbutz. There's a sense of shared responsibility and caring for each other, just incredibly strong bonds that you only find on a kibbutz, that can only be achieved by working together and being together every day and living people's daily lives, always in community. A peaceful place, rolling fields, and a quiet rural beauty. And on October the 7th, Kibbutz Kisufim was struck by particularly terrible tragedy. At least 70 Hamas fighters entered Kibbutz Kisufim on October the 7th. There was another Palestinian militant group called the National Resistance Brigade that also came in later in the day. They carried out a massacre on the kibbutz. They killed at least 8 members and 6 Thai workers. A 90-year-old woman was reportedly forcibly taken from her home's safe room into the living room and killed by a gunshot to the head. A couple and their 15-year-old son, who were sheltering in their mamad, in their safe room, were killed when militants set their house on fire after they had refused the terrorists' demands to come out. 4 kibbutz members were kidnapped, and the kibbutz buildings suffered terrible damage. The security team of the kibbutz fought back during the attack. 4 of its members were killed, including its leader. A platoon from the 51st Battalion of Golani, that's a very, very important battalion of the IDF, they arrived at the kibbutz quickly in order to repel the militants, but they quickly became engaged in a battle that lasted several hours. In the late afternoon, the soldiers had the responsibility to evacuate all of the residents of the kibbutz who were trapped in their homes and shaking with fright. 8 soldiers from the platoon were killed while helping residents evacuate. The Israeli government declared that Kisufim, along with all the other settlements around the Gaza border, would be active military zones after October the 7th. So they closed off the kibbutz. It has been closed off since then. And a day later, everyone was ushered to a hotel on the shores of the Dead Sea, and some residents have been there since that day until now. A few days later, October the 10th, Reuven Hainik, the kibbutz dairy farm manager, he asked the army for permission to enter the kibbutz dairy farm in order to feed the cows who had not received food or water for about 60 hours. The army gave him that permission, and while at the milking parlor, a terrorist who was hiding in that location killed him. And a few days after that, another terrorist who survived the battle was hiding in one of the evacuated houses, opened fire on IDF troops, and wounded 3 soldiers who are only recently making a recovery from their injuries. I tell you all this not to depress you, but to give you a sense of the tremendous violence and destruction caused by these assaults and what it has left to Kisufim. Kisufim is a ghost town now. It is a place of abandoned homes, an empty, silent village. It is heartbreaking to see it in such a state, especially knowing that one of its most beloved members, Shlomo Mansour, is still being held hostage by Hamas. He is the oldest hostage currently being held in Gaza. He's 90 years old, and he is sadly not on the list to be released this week. This is a man who in 1941 survived the Farhud pogroms in Baghdad, and he's now somewhere in Gaza, hopefully still alive. His home stands eerily at the center of the kibbutz. He's one of the founders. It serves as a painful reminder of the ongoing human cost of this war, the scars of the war, physical, emotional, they are everywhere. In the midst of this devastation, a groundbreaking ceremony, it's crazy, for a new kindergarten. It marks something profoundly hopeful. The community, having been tested by unimaginable hardship, feels that it needs to take every opportunity to send out the message to its members and to the broader public. We are still here. We are going to rebuild. We helped rebuild. We're going to dedicate a classroom funded by Beth Tikvah, a symbol of renewal. It's not just a building, it is a statement of resilience, a testament to the spirit of Kibbutz Kisufim, and a reminder of the importance of building a future even when the past is marked by sadness. At this ceremony, I was given a remarkable gift to accept on behalf of you. This is the plaque, okay? It contains, in this little box, the ashes of a home that was destroyed and burnt to the ground in the fighting, and a tree growing out of the ashes. It's a beautiful and haunting symbol that immediately reminded me of the burning bush in Parashat Shemot. When Moses first encounters God at the burning bush, he sees a fire that burns but does not consume. It is a paradox, it is a mystery, and ultimately a symbol of divine presence amidst human suffering. In the same way, this plaque represents the paradox of destruction and renewal. It contains the ashes, speaking to the pain and loss experienced by the community, but a tree sprouting from them to embody the hope that life can emerge from the ruins, that new beginnings are possible even after everything seems to be lost. Just as the burning bush was not consumed, so too the spirit of this place remains unbroken, continuing to burn brightly, fueled by the promise of the future. So I'm going to keep it somewhere special. I don't know where. Maybe at the entrance, so we can all look at it when we walk into the building, because I think it speaks to such a profound lesson. By funding this kindergarten, we at our synagogue have become part of an incredible story of renewal. We have answered the call of the burning bush, stepping forward to bring life and light where once there was only destruction. And I think we should be very proud. Another moment of my trip, powerful moment, was getting the opportunity to be among the guests of honor at a street naming ceremony in Herzliya. Herzliya is just about half an hour north of Tel Aviv, where a street was dedicated in honor of a conservative rabbi, Rabbi Shalom Tzvi Davidovitz. You probably have never heard this name before. He was a conservative rabbi who lived about 100 years ago, known not only for his deep commitment to the Jewish faith, but also for his dedication to building bridges between the Jewish people worldwide and Israel. He made incredible contributions to Hebrew literature, to the Zionist movement, and the shaping of Israel's Declaration of Independence. When Ben-Gurion was debating the language that ought to be included in the Declaration of Independence, there was a great controversy over whether the name of God, or even a reference to God, should be made in the Declaration of Independence. You had people who were very, very secular at that time and didn't want any reference to God in a political document. And then you had religious people who wanted the opposite. It was Rabbi Shalom Tzvi Davidovitz who bridged the two camps. Does anyone know which reference to God, or where there is a reference to God in the Israeli Declaration of Independence? It says, Betoch emunatenu betzur Yisrael. From our faith in the Rock of Israel. That term, Rock of Israel, could be explained differently to a secular and a religious audience, and both parties found it to be an appropriate term to include in the declaration, and it was Davidovitz who came up with this compromise. So, in a broader sense, he represents that religious commitment can coexist with an embrace of diverse opinions and thoughts. So let me tell you why this was a significant ceremony. It wasn't just because of him and his legacy. It's because it's the first time that a conservative rabbi will have a street named after him in Israel. Now, there is a Heschel Street, but Heschel wasn't exactly a conservative rabbi. He was ordained in Europe. But this street, it will say underneath his name, that he served as a conservative rabbi on the plaque that delineates the street. Throughout Zionism's history, there's been a sore spot that North American Jewry has been largely marginalized, and figures that were important to 20th century Judaism in the diaspora haven't really received proper commemoration or memorialization in Israel. And when they did receive it, there was often a lack of recognition of any connection to a non-Orthodox religious affiliation. So this street is going to say clearly that Davidovitz was a conservative rabbi, and our friend Rabbi Yitzhar Hess, who was here, I think last spring, he's the CEO of the World Zionist Organization, said at the street naming ceremony, today marks a crucial step towards fixing this injustice today. So, a wonderful, wonderful ceremony to remind us that democracy and pluralism don't have to be contentious words in Israel today, that we can have mutual recognition and mutual respect. And don't any one of you believe that that spirit has been lost in Israel today. Wasn't just a physical gesture. It was a reminder that our collective strength lies in our diversity, in our ability to learn from one another, that Israelis are still committed to that principle, and that there remains a commitment to uphold the values that make Israel a democratic and pluralistic society. And finally, one of the most impactful parts of my trip was being part of a group of 250 rabbis from around the world. No one in Israel noticed me personally, but many noticed us. And when I reflect back on the lessons from that trip, that is certainly one of the most important. Humbling and reminding me that the power of our message doesn't come from individual recognition, but from collective presence. We were there together, standing as a symbol of conservative Judaism and of all of our congregations' enduring commitment to Israel in a very difficult time. In the Torah reading this morning, Moses learns a similar lesson. Initially, he acts alone, striking down the Egyptian taskmaster who was beating an Israelite. But his solitary action backfires, and he has to flee to Midian. It is only when Moses returns to Egypt as part of a broader mission, it's only when he's joined by his brother, Aaron, when he's supported by God, when he's empowered by the collective cries of the Israelites, that's when he succeeds in his role as a leader. The idea of self-erasure for the sake of a greater cause, it is so central to who we are and what we believe. We see it in the power of the high priest on Yom Kippur, where he confesses on behalf of all of Israel. We see it in the teaching of Rabbi Akiva, who taught, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. That is the essence of the whole Torah. And we see it in the unity of the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, when we received the Torah and declared, Na'aseh v'nishma. Together we will do it. Together we will obey as one voice. My time in Israel reminded me that when we come together as a community, our impact is far greater than anything that we could achieve alone. As I reflect on these experiences, I want to leave you with 3 challenges inspired by my trip and by our Parsha. Number 1, see and act like God responding to the cries of the Israelites. We have to open our eyes, open our hearts when there is suffering around us, whether it's supporting projects like the kindergarten at Kibbutz Kisufim or addressing challenges within our own community. Let us be quick to act with compassion and resolve It is not enough to feel and empathize. We have to do something about it, and do it now. Number 2, it's never too late to recognize a forgotten legacy. Just as Rabbi Davidovitz's invaluable contributions are now being recognized 100 years later, let us look around and honor the voices and legacies that have shaped our past, whether in our synagogue, our families, or the wider world, that are too often overlooked. Let's lift them up and make sure their stories are heard. And number 3, embrace collective identity. Like the Israelites at Sinai, like 250 rabbis in Israel, when we come together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. We do not walk through the world alone. The power of our collective identity is our greatest strength. So let us build each other up. Let's support one another, and let's work together as one community towards a better future. Parashat Shemot teaches us that redemption is a process, not just of the individual, but of the collective. It begins with seeing, hearing, and acting, and it begins with us right here, right now. As we stand together, bound by history, by faith, and by the land of Israel, let us take these lessons to heart. Let us be the modern-day Moseses and Aarons, the leaders who will not wait for redemption to come, but who will bring it forth through our own actions. May we be the generation that transforms suffering into hope, division into unity, and isolation into a vibrant, inclusive community. Let us not wait for the burning bush to appear in our lives. Let us create that fire through our collective will, and let it burn brightly as a beacon for the future of the Jewish people and the future of the whole world. Shabbat Shalom.